Maya Chen's Honda hummed its familiar rattling protest as she pulled into the lower-level parking structure of the Meridian Community Center, 3 miles from the gleaming glass towers that dominated the city's new skyline. The year was 2035, and while the wealthy districts above her displayed holographic billboards and drone deliveries, down here the air still smelled like exhaust and cooking oil from the dumpling shop on the corner. She preferred it that way. She killed the engine and sat for a moment, watching her biometric stats flicker across the car's cracked dashboard display. Heart rate, steady. Stress levels, manageable. Social credit score, a modest 627, colored an unimpressive yellow on the universal scale that everyone could see floating above their heads if they wore the standard AR contacts. Maya didn't wear them. She'd removed them 3 years ago, right after her father had looked at her score during a family dinner and said, "At least it's not red." The back seat held her toolkit, traditional hand tools mixed with precision laser calibrators and molecular bonding pens. Old and new, married together. Like her approach to everything, inside the community center, the fluorescent lights buzzed with that pre-failure whine that maintenance kept promising to fix. Mrs. Nguyen already sat at their usual table near the window, her weathered hands cradling a silk-wrapped bundle. At 73, Mrs. Nguyen's social credit score hovered at 580, marked by her refugee status and limited English. The system had decided she didn't matter much. The system was wrong about a lot of things. "You came," Mrs. Nguyen said, her accent thick but her smile warm. "I always come." Maya set down her toolkit and pulled up a chair, the metal legs scraping against linoleum that probably hadn't been replaced since before the climate reformation. "Show me what you brought." Mrs. Nguyen's hands trembled as she unwrapped the silk. Inside lay a jade bracelet, cracked down the middle, the green stone dulled by decades of neglect. "My grandmother's. From Hanoi." Before the floods came, Maya lifted the bracelet carefully, angling it toward the light. The crack ran deep, but not irreparably so. The jade itself was imperial quality, probably 18th century. In the right auction house, after restoration, it could fetch $40,000. Maybe more. She said none of this. "I can fix this," Maya said instead. "Give me 2 weeks, how much?" Mrs. Nguyen's voice carried the weight of someone who'd asked that question too many times, always bracing for an answer she couldn't afford. "Does Mr. Nguyen still make those spring rolls?" "Maya, no, 24 spring rolls. That's my price." Maya placed the bracelet gently on the soft cloth she'd spread across the table. "And you let me teach your granddaughter next month. She has good hands." "I can see it," Mrs. Nguyen's eyes filled. And she reached across to squeeze Maya's wrist. "You have magic hands," she whispered. "I just help things show their true beauty," Maya said, but something warm bloomed in her chest, the kind of satisfaction that her brother's latest promotion or her cousin's crypto windfall could never touch. The light from the window caught her brooch. Art Nouveau amber, genuine Lalique, though she'd let people assume it was costume jewelry. She'd found it at an estate sale in Berkeley 3 years ago, buried in a box of broken necklaces priced at $20 for the lot. The old woman selling it hadn't known. Maya had paid $50 anyway, plus helped her catalog the rest of her late husband's collection. They'd stayed friends until the woman passed last year. Her phone vibrated. Not the ancient iPhone in her pocket, but the neural implant behind her left ear, standard issue for anyone born after 2010, though Maya kept hers on minimal notifications. The vibration pattern meant family contact. She sighed and tapped her temple twice to accept. Her father's assistant's voice filled her head, artificial and perfectly modulated. "Ms. Chen, this is a reminder that the annual Chen Family Success Showcase is scheduled for this Saturday at 7 p.m. at Richard Chen's residence. Dress code, business formal. RSVP required by end of day. Your current RSVP status, pending." Maya closed her eyes. The Success Showcase. Every year, her father gathered the family to parade their achievements like thoroughbreds at auction. Every year, Maya attended and felt herself shrink a little more. "Confirmed," she subvocalized, and the connection severed. Mrs. Nguyen was watching her with that knowing look that old women perfected somewhere around their 6th decade. "Family trouble, family dinner, ah." Mrs. Nguyen nodded sagely. "The kind where they ask why you not married, why you not rich, Why you not like your brother? Maya laughed despite herself. Exactly that kind, you tell them you are rich. Rich in here. Mrs. Nguyen tapped her chest. They just too blind to see, if only blindness were the problem. Maya's family could see perfectly well, they just didn't like what they saw. A daughter who wore thrift store vintage instead of designer labels. Who drove a 15-year-old car while Derek piloted a Tesla with full autonomous features. Who lived in a 500-square-foot studio when Marcus just bought his third vacation home, this one on the reclaimed beachfront in Malibu where they'd built seawalls high enough to hold back the Pacific. Her social credit score of 627 was respectable for someone her age without family money propping it up. But in the Chin family, where her father's score glowed at 892 and Derek sat pretty at 845, her yellow number might as well have been blood red. She spent another 2 hours at the community center, working with 3 other clients. Mr. Park needed his father's watch restored, the mechanical kind, pre-digital, the gears so delicate Maya used a magnification visor to see them properly. Young Lily Chen, no relation, brought in a damaged photograph, the only picture she had of her mother before the family had fled the Beijing flooding. Maya had a contact who could work magic with image restoration. She'd make the introduction, call in a favor. By the time she left, the sun was setting, painting the smog orange and gold. Beautiful, in its way. She stopped at a street vendor for dumplings, ignoring the flashing advertisement in her peripheral vision suggesting she upgrade to premium nutrition services. The dumplings cost $3. They were perfect. Back at her apartment, she found Sophie sprawled on their thrift store couch, a holographic display floating above her tablet while she designed something with quick, precise finger movements. Sophie's naturally curly hair was tied back with what looked like a shoelace, and she wore the same paint-stained overalls she'd had on that morning. You got the email, Sophie said without looking up. How do you always know? Because you get this specific look on your face. Like you just remembered you have a root canal scheduled. Sophie swiped the hologram away and sat up. You're actually going to the annual humiliation ritual? Maya dropped her bag by the door and collapsed into the armchair they'd rescued from a curb last year. After some cleaning and repair, it was the most comfortable seat in the apartment. It's family. Family is supposed to make you feel good, not like you're failing at life. I'm not failing, I know that. You know that. The 40 families you've helped this year know that. But do they know that? Sophie jerked her thumb in the general direction of the city's wealth sector, where Richard Chen's waterfront mansion sprawled across 2 acres of premium real estate. Maya didn't answer. She pulled out her phone, the external one, not the neural interface, and scrolled through her messages. Most were thank yous from clients. One was from Li Wei, her mentor, asking if she'd considered his offer to join his new restoration institute in Shanghai. The pay would be substantial. The prestige even more so. She'd been avoiding responding for 3 weeks. Another message made her pause. It was from a name she didn't recognize, Lydia Wang, Senior Specialist, Christie's Auction House, Hong Kong Division. Ms. Chen, we wanted to update you regarding the Qing Dynasty cabinet you restored. The auction concluded this afternoon. Final sale price, $2.3 million. The buyer is the Shanghai Museum of Art. Our team has been unanimous in praising your restoration work. Museum quality is the phrase that keeps coming up. We've taken the liberty of updating our specialist registry to include your name and have already fielded 3 inquiries about your availability for future projects. Please contact me at your earliest convenience to discuss. Maya read it twice. Then a third time. You okay? Sophie's voice seemed to come from very far away. You look weird. Are you having a stroke? Should I call emergency services? The cabinet's sold. Sophie blinked. The cabinet. The one you spent 2 years restoring? The one the Wang family found in their garage? $2.3 million. The silence stretched for 5 full seconds before Sophie screamed. It was a good scream, joyful and loud enough that Mr. Kowalski banged on the wall from next door. Sophie ignored him and launched herself at Maya, nearly knocking them both to the floor. 2.3 million. Maya. Do you know what your commission is on that? Maya did know. Standard restoration commission on a piece that size, with that level of complexity and historical significance, would be around $150,000. Minimum. Maybe more, given the authentication work she'd done and the provenance research that had taken months. She'd charged the Wong family $40,000. Plus expenses. The Wongs needed the money more than I did, Maya said, and Sophie's expression shifted from jubilation to something softer, more complicated. Their daughter's medical bills, Sophie said quietly, and the granddaughter's university fund. And they were 3 months from foreclosure. Maya extricated herself from Sophie's embrace and stood, suddenly needing to move. They didn't even know what they had. Mrs. Wong's grandmother brought it from Beijing in 1949. It had been in their garage for 15 years, under paint cans and old holiday decorations. You could have, I know what I could have done. Maya's voice came out sharper than intended. I could have charged full rate and bought myself a better apartment, a new car, maybe even improved my social credit score enough to get into the yellow high range. But then what? The Wongs lose their house. Their daughter doesn't get the surgery she needs, and I get to feel like shit every time I drive past their neighborhood. Sophie held up both hands in surrender. I wasn't criticizing. I was just, you're a better person than most people. I'm just a person who remembers what matters, and that, Sophie said, pointing at her, is why your family doesn't understand you. You and they are operating on completely different value systems. Maya knew this. Had always known this. But knowing didn't make the dinner Saturday any easier to face. She spent the next 2 days in her workshop, technically a converted storage unit, but Derek wasn't entirely wrong about the better lighting. She'd installed full-spectrum LEDs and a ventilation system that cost more than her car. The space smelled like wood oil and metal polish, familiar and grounding. Currently on her workbench sat a Victorian music box that played 3 notes before jamming, a collection of damaged Art Deco brooches that someone had tried to clean with steel wool, and a broken holographic frame displaying family photos. The frame was new tech, less than 5 years old, but the family had already abandoned it, moving on to newer models. Maya was teaching herself the repair work because someone needed to, and the big tech companies had made the devices deliberately difficult to fix. She was calibrating the music box's cylinder when her neural implant buzzed again. This time, the pattern indicated a direct call, not a message. She almost declined. She was in the middle of delicate work, but the caller ID showed Derek. Her brother never called unless something was important or he needed something. She tapped her temple. What's wrong? Why does something have to be wrong? Derek's voice filled her head, and she could hear traffic in the background. He was in his car, probably letting the AI handle the driving while he worked. He was always working, because you never call to chat. I call, you called on my birthday. 6 weeks late, I was closing the Henderson merger. You know how that is. He didn't wait for her to point out that she, in fact, did not know how that was. Listen, about Saturday, I RSVP'd. I'm coming, I know. That's what I'm calling about. He paused, and Maya heard him take a breath. Dad's bringing someone. A business partner. Some British guy who works for Christie's, helping Marcus with some investment portfolio thing. Anyway, he's going to be at dinner, and Dad wants everyone on their best behavior. When am I not on my best behavior? You know what I mean. Just, try to look successful, okay? Wear something nice. Maybe do something with your hair. And for God's sake, don't talk about your restoration stuff unless someone asks. Why would that be a problem? It's not a problem. It's just, look, this guy moves in serious circles. International art market, major collectors. Dad wants to make a good impression. Having you go on about furniture repair might not send the right message. Maya's hand tightened around the precision screwdriver she was holding. What message should I send, Derek? Just be normal. Successful normal. Like the rest of us, I am successful, you know what I mean. Visible success. The kind that shows up on credit scores and net worth statements, the kind that matters. I didn't say that, you didn't have to. Maya's voice was flat. I'll see you Saturday. I'll wear something presentable. I'll be quiet. Will that be sufficient? Maya, she tapped her temple twice, severing the connection. The music box sat before her, half repaired. She stared at it until her vision blurred, then carefully set down her tools and walked out of the workshop. Outside, the city hummed with evening activity. Overhead, drones delivered packages to the luxury apartments in the next district. Holographic advertisements flickered in the dusky air. Someone's neural implant was playing music too loudly, the bass bleeding into the ambient noise like a heartbeat. Maya walked until she found herself at the night market in Little Saigon, where the smell of grilled meat and jasmine fought for dominance. She bought a banh mi from Mrs. Tran's stall and sat on a bench to eat it, watching people move through the crowded street. Most had social credit scores in the yellow low to green range. A few dipped into red. Nobody here was pretending to be more than they were. Nobody here measured worth in auction prices or stock portfolios. Her phone buzzed. Sophie, where are you? Maya, night market. Needed air, Sophie, want company? Maya, always. Sophie arrived 20 minutes later, bringing bubble tea and commiseration. They sat on the bench together, shoulder to shoulder, while the market swirled around them. You don't have to go, Sophie said finally. I do, though. Why? Maya considered this. Because they're family. And because maybe, just once, they'll see me. Really see me. Sophie was quiet for a long moment. And if they don't, then at least I'll know I tried. That's a terrible reason to subject yourself to emotional abuse, probably. Maya finished her tea and stood, brushing crumbs from her vintage skirt. But it's the reason I have. They walked home through streets that grew progressively cleaner and quieter as they approached their neighborhood. Not wealthy, but not struggling. Middle space. Invisible space. Where Maya had learned to live comfortably, if not always happily. Saturday arrived with the inevitability of tide and tax day. Maya stood in front of her closet, a narrow rod holding a collection of vintage finds and thrift store treasures, and tried to imagine what successful normal looked like. Sophie appeared in the doorway, holding a cup of coffee. The black dress. With the brooch, Derek said to look successful. You are successful. You just don't advertise it. Sophie moved into the room and pulled out a simple black dress Maya had found at an estate sale last year. 1950s cut, perfect condition, probably cost $200 new in whatever decade it was purchased. Maya had paid $12. This is elegant. Classic. And with that Lalique brooch, you'll look expensive without trying too hard. I don't want to look expensive. But you want to not look like a disappointment, right? This threads that needle. Sophie held out the dress. Trust me. I'm a visual designer. I understand semiotics. Maya showered, dried her hair, applied minimal makeup. The dress fit perfectly, skimming her frame without clinging. The brooch pinned at her collarbone caught the light, amber glowing warm against black fabric. She looked in the mirror and saw someone who could belong at a Chin family dinner without surrendering who she was. It would have to be enough. The drive to her father's house took 40 minutes, traffic thick with Saturday evening movement. Maya's Honda rattled and hummed, the dashboard display flickering occasionally. She'd been meaning to fix that. She fixed everyone else's problems but neglected her own. Story of her life. Richard Chen's waterfront mansion announced itself from 3 blocks away, lights blazing. Holographic displays floating above the gates, the kind of house that had its own social credit score, probably platinum. Valet parking attendants in crisp uniforms directed traffic. Maya felt her stomach clench as she pulled up behind Marcus's latest vehicle, some hybrid that probably cost more than her annual income. Good evening, Miss Chen, the valet said, his AR contacts glowing as they scanned her face and pulled up her information. His expression didn't change when he saw her social credit score, but she noticed the slight pause. Your vehicle will be waiting whenever you're ready to depart. She handed over her keys and walked toward the house, heels clicking on imported stone. Through the windows, she could see the family already gathering. Derek in an expensive suit, his arm around Brittany, who was definitely recording everything for her followers. Aunt Linda dripping in diamonds that probably had their own insurance policies. Marcus holding court with a cluster of cousins, no doubt discussing his latest financial conquest, and her father, Richard Chen, standing in the center of it all like a conductor before his orchestra. Maya took a breath. smoothed her dress, touched her brooch for luck. Then she stepped through the door into the world where she would always be not quite enough. The dinner table stretched before Maya like a battlefield dressed in Versace china and baccarat crystal. Each place setting probably cost more than her monthly rent. The holographic centerpieces cycled through images of the family's various achievements: Derek's law firm, Marcus's beachfront properties, Aunt Linda's jewelry empire. Maya's accomplishments were notably absent from the rotation. She'd been seated at the far end, next to an empty chair. Geography as social commentary. Richard stood at the head of the table, his social credit score glowing platinum white above his head for anyone wearing AR contacts to see. Maya had noticed several cousins glancing up to check scores throughout the evening, their eyes making that telltale flick and focus movement. She wondered what they thought when they looked at her yellow 627. "Welcome to the Chin Family Success Showcase," Richard announced, his voice carrying that practiced authority that came from decades of closing deals. "Tonight, we celebrate achievement, ambition, and the pursuit of excellence that defines our family." Maya took a sip of champagne, expensive, of course, and tried not to think about how the bottle probably cost more than the community center's monthly budget. The door to the dining room opened, and Marcus entered with another man. Maya's attention snagged on the newcomer despite herself. He was tall, maybe early 30s, with dark hair slightly disheveled from travel. His suit was tailored but not ostentatious, and he moved with the kind of easy confidence that suggested old money rather than new. Most notably, he wasn't wearing AR contacts. His eyes were clear, unaugmented, actually seeing the world rather than the overlay. "Everyone, this is James Hartley," Marcus said, guiding the man toward the table. "Consultant for Christie's auction house. He's fresh from London, helping me with some investment opportunities in the Asian art market." James's eyes scanned the table, cataloging faces, and when they reached Maya, they stopped. Something flickered in his expression: curiosity, maybe interest. He smiled, and it transformed his face from handsome to devastating. "Apologies for my tardiness," James said, his British accent adding weight to the words. "Flight delays from Heathrow. You know how it is," Richard gestured magnanimously. "No apology necessary. Please, sit. We've saved you a place next to my daughter Maya." The way he said it, offhand, almost dismissive, made Maya's jaw tighten. She'd become an afterthought in her own family, the acceptable disappointment. James made his way to the empty chair beside her, and as he sat, their eyes met again. Up close, she could see flecks of green in his hazel irises, the slight shadow of stubble along his jaw, the way his mouth curved with something that might have been amusement. "You must be the infamous mystery Chin Marcus failed to brief me about," he said quietly, extending his hand. Maya took it. His palm was warm, his grip firm but not aggressive. The handshake lasted a beat longer than strictly professional. "Infamous," Marcus mentioned. "Richard has 2 children, Derek the golden lawyer, and..." He waited, eyebrow raised. "The disappointing artsy one," Maya supplied, surprised by her own honesty. "That's me. Maya, James." His smile widened. "And I've spent my entire career around art. I've never once found it disappointing." Heat bloomed in Maya's chest, spreading up her neck. She withdrew her hand, reaching for her champagne glass to have something to do. "You might be the first person in this room to think so. Then they're not looking properly." James settled into his chair, angling slightly toward her. "I find people often miss the most valuable things because they're too busy checking price tags." Before Maya could respond, Derek stood up, tapping his glass with a fork. The holographic displays dimmed obligingly, programmed to respond to social cues. "Since we're all here, I'd like to start the updates," Derek announced. Brittany immediately positioned herself beside him, her neural implant obviously recording. Maya could see the faint blue glow at her temple that indicated active streaming. "This year has been incredible for us. I made senior partner at Morrison Associates, which came with a 7-figure bonus. We've also been approached by 3 major firms trying to poach me." He paused for the appreciative murmurs. "But I'm loyal to Morrison. They gave me my start." Applause rippled around the table. Brittany beamed, already typing something, probably posting the news to her 40,000 Instagram followers in real time. Marcus went next, detailing his cryptocurrency investments and the Forbes feature. Aunt Linda discussed her jewelry expansion. Cousin after cousin stood and recited their achievements like lines in a play they'd rehearsed their entire lives. Maya felt herself shrinking with each recitation, becoming smaller and smaller until she might disappear entirely. She focused on her plate, tracing the gold leaf pattern with her eyes. Maya, her father's voice cut through her thoughts. She looked up to find the entire table watching her, faces arranged in expressions ranging from pity to barely concealed contempt. Any updates? Richard asked, the question hung in the air. Maya felt James shift beside her, his attention now fully focused on her. She could feel his gaze like heat against her skin. I finished a major restoration project, she said quietly. It went well. Derek's laugh had sharp edges. That's great, sis. What was it, a chair? An old dresser? Oh, that's so cute. Brittany gushed, her neural implants still recording. I love vintage stuff for like photo backgrounds. Aunt Linda leaned forward, diamonds catching the light. Maya, sweetie, when are you going to consider something more substantial? You're almost 30, Maya's fingers tightened around her fork. She said nothing, which apparently her family took as invitation to continue. Still in that studio apartment downtown? Marcus asked. Maya, I could set you up with a real estate agent. First step to real success is real property. Your social credit score would improve too, Aunt Linda added, as if this were helpful advice. Property ownership adds at least 30 points, Richard sighed, the sound heavy with parental disappointment. We just want you to reach your potential. Sweetheart. Look at Derek, he's built an empire. Marcus is a financial genius. Even your cousin Jenny just made VP at her firm. He paused, letting the weight of other people's success press down on her. We're starting to worry you're settling. Maya's throat felt tight. I'm happy with my life. Happiness doesn't pay bills, Richard said. Success does, Dad's right, Derek added. Maybe if you'd gone to law school like we discussed, or married someone established, Aunt Linda interrupted. That's what I did, the table murmured agreement, a chorus of voices telling Maya all the ways she'd failed to meet their standards. She stared at her plate and fought the burning behind her eyes. She would not cry. Not here. Not in front of them. I'm sorry, but I'm confused. James's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Every head turned toward him. Maya, you said you're a restorer, he continued, his tone politely interested but with an undercurrent of something sharper. What exactly do you restore? Maya blinked at him, surprised anyone had actually asked. Furniture, mostly. Antiques. Sometimes jewelry, decorative pieces. Things with history. And where did you study? I have a master's in cultural anthropology from Berkeley, with a concentration in material culture and conservation science. The words came automatically, though she rarely got to say them aloud. I apprenticed under Master Restorer Li Wei in San Francisco for 3 years. James's eyebrows rose. Across the table, Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Li Wei? James set down his fork with deliberate care. The Li Wei who worked on the Qing Imperial Collection? Yes. James turned to Richard, and his expression had lost all pretense of politeness. I'm sorry, but do you understand that apprenticing under Li Wei is like studying law at Oxford? He takes 1 student every 5 years. The waiting list is extraordinary. Richard waved a dismissive hand. It's still just old furniture. It's preserving cultural heritage, James said, his voice hardening. Museums pay extraordinary fees for that expertise. Yeah, but it's not exactly profitable, is it? Derek's tone carried the smugness of someone who'd never questioned his own worth. Maya flinched. James noticed. She saw his jaw tighten, saw something shift behind his eyes. I apologize if this is forward, James said, turning to Maya, but that brooch you're wearing, may I? Before she could respond, he leaned in close, his fingers brushing her collarbone as he gently touched the edge of her collar. The contact sent electricity through her nervous system. She sucked in a breath, acutely aware of his proximity, the faint scent of his cologne, the warmth radiating from his body. This is extraordinary, he murmured, examining the piece. His breath ghosted across her neck. Art Nouveau, amber and gold. The detail work is exceptional. Where did you find it? Maya's brain had momentarily short-circuited from his nearness. She forced herself to focus. Estate sale in Berkeley. 3 years ago. The family didn't know what they had, and you did. He sat back slowly, his eyes holding hers. I've studied the period extensively. Alphonse Mucha, René Lalique, the Czech and French Art Nouveau movements. James smiled, slow and deliberate. This is Lalique, isn't it? Not his most famous work, but definitely his hand. The butterfly wing motif, the specific amber treatment. He paused, still holding her gaze. You're wearing about $15,000 of jewelry you found at an estate sale. The silence that fell over the table was profound. 15,000? Brittany's voice rose an octave. Aunt Linda stared at Maya's brooch like it had personally offended her. That's impossible. It's from a thrift store. Estate sales are where the real treasures hide, James said. Most people walk past them every day. He turned back to Maya, and the warmth in his expression made her breath catch. But you see them, don't you? You see what others miss, always, Maya whispered. That's a rare gift. The air between them felt charged, heavy with potential. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. Across the table, Derek cleared his throat loudly, breaking the moment. Well, that's a lucky find, but luck is what unsuccessful people call skill, James said, not looking away from Maya. Dinner continued, but the dynamic had shifted. While her family droned on about stock portfolios and luxury purchases, James leaned closer to Maya, their conversation dropping to a low murmur that excluded everyone else. So you hunt for treasures that everyone else overlooks, he said. That must be lonely work. Maya considered this. Around them, Marcus was explaining cryptocurrency to cousin Jenny with the patience of someone who enjoyed demonstrating his expertise. Sometimes. But when you find something real, something with a story, it's worth it. And do you only search for objects? James's voice dropped lower. Or do you apply that philosophy more broadly? She met his eyes, saw the question beneath the question. Are you asking if I see value in unlikely places? I'm asking if you'd recognize someone who sees value in you. Her breath caught. I haven't met many people like that. Maybe you're looking in the wrong places. He picked up his wine glass, fingers brushing hers as he reached across. The contact felt deliberate. Estate sales are good for furniture. A meaningful pause. But terrible for finding people who appreciate quality. Maya's pulse jumped. And where would you suggest I look? Sometimes quality sits down right next to you at dinner. His eyes held hers. If you're paying attention, the world contracted to just the two of them. Maya was acutely aware of every point where their bodies nearly touched, his knee close to hers under the table, his shoulder angled toward her, the space between them charged with possibility. James. Aunt Linda's voice cut through like a knife. You must see remarkable pieces in your work at Christie's. Real treasures, not just lucky finds. James broke eye contact reluctantly. Actually, Linda, some of my most significant discoveries have come from unconventional sources. The auction world is full of surprises. Marcus leaned forward, clearly uncomfortable with where the conversation had drifted. James, we should discuss that Berkshire portfolio piece. The Rothschild estate, in a moment, Marcus. James turned back to Maya. You said you finished a major restoration. Tell me about it. What was the piece? Maya hesitated. Everyone was listening now, the table's attention fixed on her like a spotlight. It was significant. A 17th century Chinese cabinet. Qing dynasty. James went completely still. Qing dynasty, he repeated carefully. Cabinet. Lacquerwork, original lacquerwork that had been badly damaged. Water damage, structural issues, lost inlay work. The family who owned it had inherited it, but they had no idea of its provenance or value. Where is this family located? San Francisco. The piece had been in their garage for 15 years. James set down his fork with exaggerated care. And you authenticated it? Restored it, with help from my mentor. It took 2 years. We had to source period-appropriate materials, rebuild structural elements without compromising integrity, restore the lacquerwork using traditional techniques. She trailed off as James's expression shifted from interested to something else entirely. 2 years on one piece of furniture, Richard interrupted, annoyance sharp in his voice. This is exactly what we mean, Maya. That's not a sustainable business model. Dad's right, Derek added. 2 years? My associates bill quarterly. James's hand flattened against the table. Richard, please be quiet. His voice carried enough authority that Richard actually stopped talking. Maya, what happened to the cabinet after restoration? The family wanted to sell it. They needed the money, medical bills, mortgage issues. I helped them authenticate it properly and connected them with an auction house. Which auction house? Maya's mouth had gone dry. Christie's Hong Kong division. James sat back in his chair, and something like wonder spread across his face. When? 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. He started to smile. Maya, did this cabinet have phoenix and dragon motifs? Imperial provenance? Identification marks suggesting Kangxi period? Yes. She studied his face, trying to understand. How did you? Oh my God, James said, and then he laughed, a genuine sound of delighted surprise. What? Marcus demanded. What's going on? James turned to face the table. Do any of you follow high-end auctions? Derek shrugged. Not really my area. 3 weeks ago, James said slowly, Christie's Hong Kong had one of their most successful Asian art auctions in 5 years. The star lot was a Qing dynasty cabinet, Kangxi period, authenticated as coming from the imperial workshops. It had been lost for over a century, showed up in California of all places. Aunt Linda waved her hand impatiently. That's fascinating. But, it sold for $2.3 million, the silence was absolute. Even the holographic displays seemed to freeze. Million? Brittany's voice cracked. With an M, James pulled out his phone, the external kind, not relying on neural interface, and scrolled quickly. Here. The auction catalog. He held the screen up, turning it so everyone could see. The piece was estimated at $20,000 based on initial photos. After restoration and proper authentication, it sold for $2.3 million. The buyer was the Shanghai Museum of Art. Derek's face had gone pale. That's impossible. James scrolled further, then began reading aloud. The catalog notes say, and I quote, thanks to the extraordinary restoration work of M. Chen, California, this imperial treasure has been returned to its former glory. The restoration is considered museum quality, with period-appropriate techniques and materials. Ms. Chen's work has been described as both an act of cultural preservation and artistic resurrection. He looked up, his eyes finding Maya's across the table. His expression held awe, respect, and something warmer that made her stomach flip. M. Chen, he said softly. Maya Chen. That's you, the table erupted. Everyone tried to talk at once, voices overlapping in confusion and disbelief. Maya sat frozen, her secret laid bare, feeling exposed and vindicated in equal measure. Yes, she said quietly, but the word carried. Richard stood so abruptly his chair scraped against the floor. You sold something for $2.3 million, I didn't sell it. Maya's voice was steady now. The family sold it. I just helped them understand what they had. The commission on $2.3 million would be. Marcus was already calculating, his eyes distant with internal math. Standard auction house commission is around 10 to 15%, James interrupted. But the restorer's fee for a project of this magnitude would be separate. Especially given the complexity and time investment. He looked at Maya. What did you charge? Maya's throat tightened. That's private, Maya. James's voice was gentle but firm. Standard rate for museum quality restoration on a piece that size would be $150,000 minimum. More if you handled authentication and provenance research. $150,000? Aunt Linda's voice had gone faint. Maya stood, her chair sliding back. She was done hiding. I charged less. The family needed the money more than I did. They kept the full auction proceeds minus standard auction house fees. I took a flat project fee that covered my costs and materials. How much less? Derek demanded. 40,000. Plus expenses. You walked away from over $100,000? Richard's face had gone red. I walked away from money they desperately needed. Maya's voice rose. 5 years of frustration finally breaking free. Mrs. Wong's husband has cancer. They were about to lose their house. Their granddaughter needs college money. The cabinet was their only asset of value, and they didn't even know it. I helped them save their lives. That was worth more than maximizing my fee. The table had gone silent again, but this silence felt different. Shocked. James was staring at her like she'd revealed herself to be something mythical. You took 40,000 when you could have taken 200, he said softly. Because they needed it more, it was the right thing to do. Something shifted in James's expression, admiration becoming something deeper. More intense. You are remarkable. Is she, like, famous in the art world? Brittany whispered to Derek, loud enough for everyone to hear. She should be, James said. This is exactly the kind of work major museums and collectors are desperate for. And she's doing it from, what did Marcus say, a studio apartment, a workshop, Maya corrected. I have a separate workspace. Where? Derek's voice held accusation. How did we not know about this? Maya felt something break open in her chest. Because you never asked. You never ask anything about my life. You just assume it's small and unimportant. Well, this is wonderful news. Aunt Linda tried to inject enthusiasm into her voice. Already pivoting. Maya, you should have told us. We're family, we could have helped, made connections. Helped? The word came out sharp. Maya was standing now, though she didn't remember rising. You've spent 5 years making me feel worthless. Every dinner, every family gathering, every phone call, all I hear is how I'm the disappointment. How I'm wasting my potential. How I need to be more like Derek, more like Marcus, more like anyone but myself. We were trying to motivate you, Richard started. You were trying to shame me into becoming someone I'm not. Her voice cracked, years of hurt bleeding through. Do you know what it's like to sit at this table year after year, listening to you celebrate money and status and appearances while treating me like I'm invisible? Like I'm a failure because I care about something other than profit? Maya, that's not, Derek tried. Yes, it is. You introduced your fiancée to your colleagues before you introduced her to me. Marcus, you've asked me if I need money at least a dozen times. Never asked if I need anything else. Dad. She turned to Richard, tears forming despite her best efforts. You've spent my entire adult life telling me I'm not enough. Well, guess what? I am enough. I've always been enough. And I didn't need to prove it with money or titles or social media followers. James stood abruptly, moving to Maya's side. The gesture felt protective, supportive. He turned to face the table, his expression hard. Maya's right, he said. And I'm going to say something unprofessional that will probably cost me Marcus's business. But I don't care. He met Marcus's eyes directly. I flew in from London yesterday for what I thought would be a tedious business dinner. Investment talk, portfolio reviews, the usual wealthy American routine. Instead, I've spent the evening watching a family systematically diminish the most talented, passionate, and genuinely good person at this table. James, you don't understand our family dynamics. Marcus tried. I understand that Maya has more integrity in her little finger than this entire table combined. James's voice cut like steel. She could be wealthy. She could be charging premium rates, working with major museums, living in luxury. Instead, she chooses to help families in need. To preserve culture and history, to teach immigrants how to save their heirlooms. And you mock her for it. Now wait just a minute, Richard started. James overrode him effortlessly. In my work, I meet extremely wealthy people every day. Collectors who spend millions on art they don't understand, investors who see culture as a commodity, people who measure worth exclusively in pounds and dollars. Do you know what they all lack? He paused. Purpose. Passion. The ability to see real value. He turned to Maya, his voice softening. Maya, I'm going to be very direct because I'm English and we're terrible at subtlety when it actually matters. From the moment I sat down tonight. You've been the most interesting person I've met in 5 years of this work. The way you see beauty in overlooked things, the way you value people over profit, your knowledge, your passion, your kindness, it's extraordinary. Maya couldn't breathe. James, I came tonight expecting business. Instead, I found. He hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. I found someone I'd like to know better. Much better. Away from auction houses and family dinners and people who don't appreciate what they have, the table was dead silent. Maya could see Brittany's neural implant glowing. She was recording this, broadcasting it live to her followers. Maya found she didn't care. James took a breath. So I'm going to ask you something in front of your entire family, and if you say no, I'll respect it and leave quietly. Maya Chen, would you have dinner with me tomorrow? Somewhere without an audience. Somewhere we can talk about art and restoration and why you care more about helping people than impressing them. Somewhere I can properly fall for you without your brother glaring at me. Excuse me, Derek sputtered. Maya ignored him, her eyes locked on James. You're asking me out? Now? Here, I'm asking if you'll give me a chance to show you that someone sees you. Really sees you. Not your bank account or your social status or what car you drive. Just you. A smile broke through her tears. You really meant that thing about me being remarkable. I never say things I don't mean. It's a British trait, we're painfully honest when we actually care. Maya laughed, the sound watery but genuine. Then yes. Dinner tomorrow. But I'm choosing the restaurant, because I guarantee you'd pick somewhere too expensive and I'd feel weird about it. James grinned. Deal. Though I'm buying, and I don't want arguments, we'll negotiate. He stepped closer, voice dropping to that intimate register that seemed meant only for her. I look forward to many, many negotiations with you. The chemistry between them crackled, visible to everyone watching. James offered his arm, Maya took it. Feeling the solid warmth of him beside her, she turned to face her family one last time. I'm leaving now. James is going to walk me out, and then I'm going home. Take off this dress, and remember why I don't need your approval. Maya, wait, Richard said. We can talk about this. No, Dad. We can't. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. Her voice softened, sadness mixing with the anger. I spent so many years trying to make you proud. Trying to be enough. But I finally understand, I was always enough. You just weren't looking. She walked toward the door, James beside her, their footsteps synchronized. Behind them, the Chin family sat in stunned silence, finally seeing what had been there all along. Maya woke to the insistent buzzing of her neural implant, not the gentle pulse of a single notification, but the frantic cascade that meant something had gone catastrophically viral. She blinked against the morning light filtering through her apartment's single window and tapped her temple to silence it, but the damage was done. Her phone, lying on the nightstand, was vibrating itself toward the edge. 47 missed calls. 316 text messages. Her Instagram notifications had maxed out at 999 plus. What the hell? Maya sat up, her vintage dress from last night still draped over the chair where she'd carefully hung it. The Lalique brooch caught the morning sun. Throwing amber light across the wall, she grabbed her phone and immediately understood. Brittany's post sat at the top of her feed, already at 10,000 likes and climbing. The video was professionally edited, of course it was. Brittany had been streaming the whole thing through her neural implant, with dramatic music and strategic cuts that made Maya look like a protagonist in some aspirational drama, family dinner drama, when the quiet cousin turns out to be secret millionaire art expert and gets asked out by British hottie #family drama #plot twist #know your worth. Maya's stomach dropped as she scrolled through the comments. This is the energy we need. The way he defended her loudly crying face, loudly crying face, loudly crying face, I'm crying. Imagine finding out your disappointing family member is actually amazing. Can someone cast this movie? I'll watch it. Her family really said, you're a failure, and she casually sold something for 2.3 million. The apartment door burst open. Sophie had a key for emergencies, and apparently this qualified. She carried a paper bag that smelled like butter and coffee, her face split by a manic grin. "You're famous," Sophie announced, dumping the bag on Maya's tiny kitchen counter. "The TikToks are insane. People are calling you the art princess. James is being called the British Knight. There are actual fan accounts. Plural." With graphics, Maya buried her face in her hands. "Oh God, oh, it gets better." Sophie pulled out her own phone, scrolling rapidly. Christie's auction house posted on their official account this morning, "We're proud to work with restoration experts like Maya Chen, whose dedication to cultural preservation exemplifies the best of our field. You're getting job offers in your DMs. I counted at least 12 museums and private collectors. This is insane." Maya's voice was muffled by her palms. "Your social credit score jumped to 704 overnight. Yellow high now. You're practically respectable." Sophie's grin turned wicked. "Your dad called 6 times. Derek called 8. Even Marcus called, which, given that James apparently dumped him as a client, takes some nerve." Maya's head snapped up. "James dumped him, this morning. Very polite email about misaligned values. It's already screenshot and circulating in the comments." Sophie paused dramatically. "And speaking of James, he texted." Maya lunged for her phone, scrolling past the avalanche of notifications to find his message. It was simple, direct, achingly real. "I hope the internet frenzy hasn't scared you off. Still planning to pick you up at 7. Wear something you love, not something you think you should wear. J." Something warm bloomed in Maya's chest, pushing back against the anxiety of sudden visibility. She looked up at Sophie, unable to suppress a smile. "He's real. Girl." Sophie sat on the edge of Maya's bed, her expression shifting from teasing to serious. "You need to prep. First viral moment and first date with a gorgeous British art expert who publicly declared his interest in front of your entire toxic family? We have work to do." Maya glanced at the time display on her phone. 9:30 a.m. She had 9.5 hours, coffee first, she decided. Across the city, in Richard Chen's waterfront mansion, the family was experiencing their own morning after. The dining room, scene of last night's revelation, had been meticulously cleaned by the housekeeping AI, but the emotional wreckage was harder to erase. Derek sat at the breakfast bar, his own phone in hand, scrolling through damage with the grim focus of someone watching a car crash in slow motion. His neural implant kept pinging with notifications from colleagues, clients, even the senior partners at his firm. His social credit score hadn't moved, still a solid 845, but the attention was unwelcome. "The firm is asking questions," he said without looking up. Clients saw the video. Some of them think it's entertaining. Others want to know why my sister, who's apparently a restoration expert with museum connections, wasn't on our radar for their own collections. Aunt Linda sat across from him, her diamonds from last night replaced with more modest jewelry. She looked smaller without the armor of excess. "Have you seen the comments about me?" Her voice was tight. The diamond aunt who didn't recognize real treasure. Imagine mocking someone for thrift shopping when they found a $15,000 brooch. "This is humiliating." Marcus paced near the windows, his movements jerky with barely contained fury. "James dropped me." Email came through at 6 a.m. London time. "Very professional, very polite. After further consideration, I don't think our values align. I'm sure you'll understand." Do you know how much his consultation was worth? The connections he had, how much? Aunt Linda asked. 6 figures. Minimum. Marcus's jaw was tight. "And now it's gone because I didn't realize my cousin was some kind of art world prodigy." Richard Chen sat at the head of the table, his usual position, but he hadn't touched his coffee. In his hands, he held a photograph in an old-fashioned physical frame, something he'd retrieved from his study that morning. Maya at 16, holding up a plaque, her smile genuine and unguarded. The award read something about historical preservation. But Richard couldn't remember the details. He'd been closing the Riverside development deal that week, hadn't made it to the ceremony. "We need to fix this," he said quietly. Derek looked up. "How?" She walked out. "She's not answering calls. I've tried." "Sophie's probably screening for her, then we go to her." Richard set the photograph down carefully. "We go to her apartment. We see where she works, what she's built. And we apologize." "Apologize?" Marcus stopped pacing. "For what?" "We didn't know, that's exactly what we apologize for." Richard's voice carried the weight of someone who'd spent the night reviewing his failures. "We didn't know because we didn't ask. We didn't look. We measured her by our standards and found her wanting, when we should have been questioning our standards instead." The room fell silent. Outside, a delivery drone buzzed past the windows, its advertising panel flashing something about luxury timepieces. The irony wasn't lost on Derek. "She has a date tonight," Aunt Linda said suddenly. "I saw it in the comments. People are treating it like some kind of fairy tale. The princess and the knight." She paused. "We should go this afternoon. Give her time to tell us to leave if she wants." Richard nodded. This afternoon, then, back in Maya's apartment, preparations had taken on the atmosphere of a pre-battle ritual. Sophie had declared herself Maya's stylist and strategist, spreading outfit options across every available surface while simultaneously managing the flood of social media attention. "Okay, listen," Sophie said, holding up 2 dresses. "This is important. The teal 50s dress says, 'I'm elegant and know my worth.' The burgundy 60s shift says, 'I'm sophisticated and slightly dangerous.' Which energy are we going for?" Maya sat on her bed, her second cup of coffee cradled in both hands. "I don't know. Which one says, 'I'm terrified but trying not to show it'?" "Both, honestly. That's your secret weapon." Sophie set down the dresses. "Real talk, how are you feeling about all this?" Maya considered. The apartment felt smaller with the weight of internet attention pressing against it. Her neural implant kept buzzing with new follower notifications, friend requests, messages from people she'd gone to Berkeley with who suddenly remembered she existed. The restoration community was flooding her with congratulations and collaboration offers. 3 museums had sent formal consultation requests. Her inbox was chaos, but underneath the anxiety was something else. Something that felt like vindication, like years of invisible work finally being seen. "I feel like I'm standing on the edge of something," Maya said finally. "Like my life is about to change completely, and I'm not sure if I want it to. Do you want to see James tonight?" "Yes." The answer came immediately. "Certain." "That part I'm sure about, then we build from there." Sophie picked up the teal dress. "This one. It's more you. And pair it with those vintage heels you restored last month, the ones with the pearl buttons." Maya showered, taking her time, letting the hot water ease the tension in her shoulders. She'd slept poorly, dreams full of camera flashes and her father's disappointed face. But there had been other dreams too, James's hand brushing her collarbone, his voice low and warm, the way he'd looked at her like she was something precious. She was toweling her hair when the knock came. 3 sharp raps, authoritative. Sophie appeared in the bathroom doorway, her expression caught between concern and curiosity. "Your family's here. Your dad, Derek, and Aunt Linda." Maya's stomach clenched. "What do they want?" "To talk, apparently." "I can tell them you're not available." Maya looked at herself in the mirror. Hair damp, face bare, wearing Sophie's oversized robe. Not exactly a power position. But maybe that was okay. Maybe she was done performing for them. "Let them in," she said. "But tell them they have until I finish getting ready." Not a minute more, she heard Sophie open the door, heard her father's voice, lower than usual, missing its typical commanding edge. Maya took her time with her hair, running a comb through the tangles, letting them wait. When she emerged from the bathroom, they were standing awkwardly in her living space. The apartment was only 500 square feet, and 3 additional people made it feel cramped. But Maya saw them looking around, really looking, for perhaps the first time. Her workspace dominated one corner, a drafting table covered in sketches and material samples, shelves holding tools both traditional and modern, a magnification visor hanging from a hook. The walls were covered in photographs, not of herself, but of the families she'd helped. Mrs. Nguyen with her restored bracelet. The Wong family at their granddaughter's graduation. Mr. Park wearing his father's watch. Dozens of faces, dozens of stories, books everywhere. Stacked on surfaces and shelved in careful organization. Art history, conservation science, cultural anthropology. A lifetime of learning that her family had dismissed as impractical. Maya, Richard started, but she held up a hand. I have a date in 2 hours. Make it quick. Aunt Linda was examining the photographs, her expression unreadable. This is your workshop, part of it. I have a separate space for larger projects. Maya moved past them to her closet, pulling out the teal dress Sophie had chosen. Is there a reason you're here? We saw the video, Derek said. His hands were in his pockets, his usual confidence diminished. Actually, everyone saw the video. It's everywhere. I noticed. Maya disappeared back into the bathroom to change, leaving the door slightly ajar so she could hear them. Brittany has a real talent for viral content. You should be proud. We're not. Richard stopped, restarting. I watched it multiple times. And I read the comments. Thousands of people defending you. Calling you inspiring. Maya emerged in the dress, reaching for the vintage heels. That's nice. But I didn't do it for strangers. I did it because I finally got tired of being invisible to my own family. The words landed like stones in still water. Derek looked at the floor. Aunt Linda turned from the photographs. You're not invisible, Derek said, but it sounded hollow even to him. Didn't pay attention? Maya offered. Didn't care? She sat on her bed to fasten the heel straps, her movements deliberate. Take your pick. The result's the same. Richard moved closer, his hands clasped behind his back, a position Maya recognized from childhood, from the rare times he'd admitted error. I watched you grow up, he said slowly. I watched you become passionate about art and history and preservation. And somewhere along the way, I decided that passion wasn't valuable because it didn't look like what I understood as success. Maya's hands stilled on the second heel. I have a photograph, Richard continued. You're 16, holding an award for some historical project. I didn't make it to the ceremony. I was closing a deal. He paused. I didn't even ask what the award was for until this morning. I had to search my email archives to find out. California Historical Society Youth Achievement Award, Maya said quietly. For my research on Chinese immigration patterns and material culture preservation. It came with a $2,000 scholarship. I didn't know that. I know you didn't. Maya finished with the heel and stood, smoothing her dress. That's the point, Dad. You never knew because you never asked. None of you did. You had your definition of success, money, status, social credit scores, and I didn't fit it. So I became invisible. Aunt Linda had moved to the drafting table, her fingers hovering over a sketch of an Art Deco brooch. These are beautiful, she said softly. The detail work is extraordinary, thank you. Maya's tone was carefully neutral. I have a jewelry business, Aunt Linda continued, and I never once thought to ask if you had any interest in it. If you had skills I could learn from. She turned to face Maya. I'm sorry for that. And I'm sorry for every comment I made about your clothes, your apartment, your choices. They came from a place of, I don't know. Fear, maybe. That you'd chosen a path I didn't understand. And that made it wrong somehow. The apology hung in the air. Maya had imagined this moment countless times over the years, her family finally seeing her, acknowledging her worth. In those fantasies, she'd felt triumphant. Vindicated. But the reality was more complicated. She felt tired, and sad, and uncertain whether this change would last beyond the viral moment. Marcus is angry, Derek said abruptly. About James dropping him. He's talking about it being your fault, Maya laughed, sharp and short. My fault that James has principles? That's rich, "It's not your fault," Derek clarified. I wanted you to know he's saying things. Being petty about it. Marcus has always been petty." Maya moved to her vanity, applying minimal makeup with practiced efficiency. "He's upset he lost access to someone valuable. That's what happens when you treat people like assets instead of humans. Is that how we made you feel?" Richard asked. "Like an asset that wasn't performing." Maya met his eyes in the mirror. "You made me feel like a failure. Like everything I cared about was wrong, and I was wrong for caring. Do you know how many times I almost gave up? How many times I considered going to law school or business school or doing something impractical, just to make you happy?" She turned to face them. "The only reason I didn't was because I met people who saw value in what I do. Mrs. Nguyen, Mr. Park, the Wong family, they reminded me that my work matters. That helping people matters more than impressing them." Sophie appeared in the doorway, holding Maya's phone. "It's 6:30. James texted to confirm he's on his way." Maya's heart jumped, anxiety and anticipation mixing together. She took the phone, reading the message quickly. Just a simple confirmation, but it steadied her. "You need to leave," she told her family. "I have somewhere to be. Can we?" Richard stopped. "Can we talk again? After your date? Maybe come see your workshop, the real one." Maya studied his face, looking for signs of performance, of the calculated interest he brought to business negotiations. But he looked genuinely uncertain, genuinely hoping for a chance to understand. "Maybe," she said finally. "If this is real, if you actually want to understand my life instead of just managing your public image after a viral video, then maybe." "But Dad?" She waited until he met her eyes. "I'm not going to change who I am to make you comfortable. Not anymore. I'm not asking you to." Richard's voice was steady. "I'm asking for the chance to see who you really are. I should have done that years ago." Aunt Linda moved toward the door, Derek following. "You look beautiful," Aunt Linda said softly. "That dress is stunning. And I'm sorry I ever made you feel like your style was wrong." "It's vintage," Maya said. 1952, I think. Bought it at an estate sale for $30. It's probably worth $400 now." A ghost of a smile crossed Aunt Linda's face. "Of course it is. You have an extraordinary eye." They filed out, leaving Maya and Sophie alone in the apartment. The silence felt heavy with potential, with change that might or might not stick. Sophie broke it first. "Holy shit. Did your dad just apologize?" "He tried to." Maya sank onto her bed, suddenly exhausted. "I don't know if I believe it yet. You don't have to decide right now." Sophie handed her the Lalique brooch. "Tonight, you go on a date with a man who saw your worth immediately. Tomorrow, you deal with your family's sudden epiphany. One thing at a time." Maya pinned the brooch to her dress, the amber catching the fading daylight. Outside, the city hummed with evening activity. Somewhere out there, James Hartley was on his way to pick her up in her 15-year-old Honda because she'd refused to let him send a car. Somewhere out there, thousands of strangers were debating her life in comment sections. Somewhere out there, her future was waiting. She took a breath and stood. "How do I look?" Sophie smiled, genuine and warm. Like someone who knows exactly who she is. The neural implant buzzed. James was downstairs. Maya grabbed her small vintage clutch, checked that she had her keys, and moved toward the door. Sophie followed her down the narrow stairs, providing a running commentary about posted updates and new comments, but Maya barely heard her. At the building's entrance, she could see him through the glass door. James Hartley, leaning against her Honda with his hands in his pockets, looking up at her building with the patient ease of someone content to wait. He'd changed from last night's suit into dark jeans and a button-down, somehow managing to look both casual and elegant. He saw her and straightened, his face transforming with a smile that made Maya's stomach flip. She pushed through the door, and he met her halfway. His eyes taking her in with obvious appreciation. "You wore something you love," he said simply. "How can you tell?" "Because you look like yourself. Only more so." He offered his arm. "Ready?" Maya took it, feeling the solid warmth of him beside her. Behind them, Sophie was definitely recording this. Maya could hear her making delighted noises. But she didn't care. "Where are we going?" she asked as James opened the passenger door for her. "You said you'd choose the restaurant." "I'm following your lead." Maya slid into her car, which suddenly felt both too small and exactly right for this moment. James walked around to the driver's side, folding himself into the worn seat with no trace of judgment. "There's a place in Chinatown," Maya said as he started the engine. "Family owned, been there for 40 years. They don't take reservations and the social credit scanner is always broken, so everyone's welcome. The food is extraordinary." James smiled and pulled away from the curb. "That sounds perfect." As they drove through the city, past holographic advertisements and drone traffic and people checking their social credit scores with quick glances upward, Maya felt something shift inside her. The viral video would fade. Her family's sudden interest might or might not last. But this moment of being seen, of being chosen for exactly who she was, this was real. "Thank you," she said quietly. James glanced over. "For what?" "For seeing me. For defending me. For all of it." He reached across and took her hand, threading their fingers together. "Maya, I didn't do anything you hadn't already done yourself. I just had the privilege of witnessing it." The city lights blurred past, and Maya thought about treasures hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone with the right eye to recognize their worth. She'd spent her career finding those treasures in objects. Maybe it was time to start believing she was one too.